After a highly inspiring episode 4, welcome to the 5th episode of Satahana, organized by the FMF Media Club of the Faculty of Management and Finance, University of Colombo. I'm Kavindi and I will be your host for this episode of Satahana. So if you're joining us for the first time, well, Satahana is an initiative of FMF Media to enhance the awareness of undergraduate students about the current market issues, corporate world behavior patterns, and organizational trends in Sri Lanka. Here, we intend to discuss solutions for ongoing issues in the corporate world with our very own university lecturers, through which you will be given the opportunity of gaining a sound knowledge on these issues and how to address them diplomatically. And joining us today is a well-esteemed personality that is quite familiar to all of us at our faculty. It is none other than Dr. Sajitha Dishankar, Senior Lecturer and Head of Department of International Business at the Faculty of Management and Finance, University of Colombo. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce and a Master of Business Administration from University of Colombo and a PhD from University of Tokyo, Japan. His teaching interests are international business, international economics, and managerial economics. And his research interests are political economy, global economic issues, capabilities and human development, and cross-cultural management. Let me warmly welcome you, sir, for the 5th episode of Satahana.
Thank you, Kar.
So without further ado, let's move on to the topic for the day. So today we expect to conduct our discussion revolving around the pandemic and its impact on the arena of international business. So as the first question, sir, I would like to ask you, as an important hub of international business, what's your opinion about the internationalization of Sri Lanka?
Okay, Kavindi, let me approach this one using a certain ideological perspective. Ideologically, there are two main views to internationalization of a country in trade and business. One perspective is quite idealistic, which is based on market approach or trade liberalization. This approach it promotes openness and encourages more integrated and interdependent world. Further, this approach recognizes the openness as the engine of economic growth and prosperity. What they highlight is through efficiency gains, the countries can get more for their economy, for their growth and development. Mainly in the present context, this ideology is advocated by the World Bank, the IMF, and WTO. What they need is to create more liberalized, free and fair trade around the world. And the other perspective is quite realistic. That is, that ideology says if you do not incorporate some trade policy mechanism, there would be some kind of repercussions when you freely involve in international trade. Because the environmental dynamism and the nature of the country would create more vulnerabilities unless you come up with a certain policy mechanism. Now, if you take Sri Lanka, generally we identify Sri Lanka as a small country in international trade and international business. If you look at the past and the evolution of Sri Lankan economy, we capitalized more on natural advantage. For example, if you take the land factor, the climate factor, and the water resources like these and the other resources, other water resources, and also in the water perspective, you can take labor as a certain natural factor. So that's why actually the whole world kept an eye on us. Like we know that, okay, before the independence, we were acquired, we were governed by 3 European nations, but still it's there. Still the whole world is keeping an eye on us. So therefore, now we need to look at carefully what we have done in the past and what we have to do in the future to reduce our vulnerability and to become more interdependent. We can't say that we have to be independent. In a more globalized world, we can't be independent, but we have to reduce the dependence, and we have to be interdependent. So that is why we need to look at our trade policies and the process of internationalization very carefully. Now, especially if you take after 1948, our independence, there were a lot of business dynamics in the world. The different countries, like if you take Asian countries mainly, they adopted different approaches. They strategized their trade policies and broadly the economic policies according to the environmental requirements. But the question here is, did we respond properly to these environmental dynamics? I would like to take two time periods from our past. One is 1970-77 period. We have heard of this period. So there we identify it as an inward-oriented economy, or much closed economy we had during that period, and there are more local businesses were promoted, and more economic policies were based on national level. So I think that is a kind of very positive change introduced by the government that time. But unfortunately, the implementation, there were problems in the implementation and the policy mechanism. And then in 1978, we see this sudden change, a kind of, we call it a kind of shock therapy in international business or political economic transition. It's a shock therapy treatment, kind of a shock therapy. There are more open or liberalization and free market oriented policies were introduced. I think that was a certain landmark of the Sri Lankan economy. As far as my personal viewpoint is concerned, it was too early. I feel like it's that decision to liberalize or to open the economy was more political rather than economic. It was a political decision rather than an economic decision. So I think that is what went wrong there. I'm not saying that it's perfectly some kind of ineffective thing, but from that point onward, I think the dependence culture was promoted rather than being interdependent. The dependent culture is promoted. So that is why still we can see in our economic activities, sometimes in consumption, sometimes in production, or even investment, we try to depend on other countries. So therefore, this has created more vulnerabilities. This has avoided, avoided the internal cushion that we should have to face the external shocks. So therefore, that is what I think still we are suffering in this process.
That's very true indeed, sir. So moving on to our next question. So it's visible that along the past 2 years, Sri Lanka has severely depended on international trade and tourism. So did Sri Lanka successfully overcome these challenges?
Right, yeah. Now, if you take again, like I said earlier, our economic activities were highly based on this natural advantage. Let me take two industries here. One is the agricultural or agro-based industry. The other one is the tourism industry. Now, if you just take these agro-based industry, for example, if you take tea, coconut, rubber, and paddy. So we were self-sufficient in these products, right, in terms of these products in the past. But now, unfortunately, we know that at the moment now due to this some kind of market imperfections, due to this shortage in supply, production and supply, we happen to import rice and coconut. So that is one thing. The other one is if you take the tourism industry, still I feel like some kind of changes are there. We have introduced some kind of changes are there, but still it's more conventional. So I think we were unable to move from this natural advantage to competitive advantage. So that is the most important thing. Still, we are capitalizing on the natural advantage. So we need to think of strategizing these two industries. Now, just take again the tea industry. So in, if I'm not mistaken, 1867, James Taylor planted the first tea plant in Sri Lanka. And then, okay, we had a certain evolution in this tea industry. But we don't see a kind of remarkable change in this process. Still, we are export oriented in the tea industry. That is, we export what we produce. But we have to be market oriented, or we have to be strategic oriented in this business, in this industry. For that, we need some kind of changes like, let's say, research and development, technological advancement, and more investment, and also human capital development targeting this particular industry, not just the tea industry or not just these agro-based industry, but also the tourism industry, the same thing. So we need to adopt these new practices because the environment is, or the world or the global demand is changing. And we are not the only country that provides this product to the market. There are new entrants into the market. They are strategizing their resources. They are innovating new products. So therefore, that is what we need to think of converting these two industries into such a strategic orientation. For this, I think we need more supply side oriented economic policies rather than these demand side economic policies, like, for example, let's say the fiscal practices and the monetary things and the trade policies, rather than these things. Yeah, we need to practice these things along with the changes in these industries. Like, for example, we need fiscal operations targeting these industries. That's true. We need monetary operations targeting these industries. That's true. And also the trade policy initiatives targeting these industries. But importantly, when we focus on this kind of transition of this industry, we need to go by some supply side policies like this research and development, investment, technology, human capital formation. So therefore, I feel still we are not doing good. We are not doing enough in this industry. We have, I think we have underestimated or we have neglected our capacity and our potential. So we have to do more.
Very true, sir. Those are some great insights. So, although Sri Lanka is a small country by the size of its land and its population, it's a country with full of resources. So, according to you, sir, what hinders Sri Lanka from getting into the global market? Now, because if we take countries like Singapore with absolutely no resources, have become giants in the global market. How would you interpret this, sir?
Good question. Now, if you take Singapore, actually we used to compare Sri Lanka with Singapore since in the past. Because we all know that if you look at the historical performance of Sri Lanka and Singapore, actually we were far ahead of Singapore in terms of economic performance, mainly in terms of per capita income. But when you look at the latest statistics, like we have just reached this 4,000 US dollars per capita income level, while Singapore has reached the 60,000 level. So Singapore has proved that the success is not simply based on physical or natural resourcefulness of a country. Because Singapore didn't have that kind of physical or natural resources. Like, and they have proved their success is just a matter of leadership and management. If you take a look at the secret of their success, actually that is mainly based on their vision and the mission. Their vision was conceptualized in their industrial policy, and their mission was operationalized in the leadership of that great leader Lee Kuan Yew. Because we know that generally a vision without a mission is a kind of a fairy tale or kind of daydream. And a mission without a vision is called a nightmare. It's quite disastrous. So what's behind the success stories, the economy-wide industrial policy. Industrial policy is the strategic plan of the government. Like in a business organization, the top level plan is the strategic plan. So similarly, as far as the government or as far as the economy is concerned, strategic plan is called the industrial policy. So they adopted mainly an outward oriented industrial policy because they were lacking resources. They didn't have resources. They had to get everything outside. And the thing is, important point here is in this, their macroeconomic management and leadership, it was a poor country. Now, usually poors think that, okay, they're trying to depend on someone else. That is a usual practice. But what they did was they identified even the country is a poor country, in what perspectives they are rich. And also they identified other countries are rich, that's true, but in what perspectives those countries are poor, right? So this is how they matched these two things. So mainly they identified the developed countries or the rich countries were lacking kind of a service center. That is, with the globalization of business, the rich countries and their businesses were searching for a certain service center or a trade hub to make their distribution process more effective and efficient. And that is the point this poor country capitalized on. So now you can see how they converted their weakness and how they converted their weakness into an opportunity. So this is what we need to identify, or this is what we have to take as a lesson for a country. Because it's kind of, we also, geographically, Sri Lanka is also located in a very strategic position. And this is what we missed. Let me just take one point here, one example. There was a certain article written by a famous economist called Ronald Snodgrass. He has written a certain document, an article on the tale of missed opportunities of Sri Lanka. Missed opportunities. So that means we had opportunities. All these opportunities where the Singapore capitalized on were there in front of us. But we could not do that thing. And we were thinking of, okay, like we are poor. This is how I feel, right? This is my personal perspective. We were thinking of, okay, we are poor, so we have to depend on someone else. I think that mentality has, it is quite disastrous, right? That mentality, and that has hindered our growth and development. So therefore, such kind of leadership and a policy mechanism definitely would have taken Sri Lanka towards a certain high level where Singapore now is.
So I feel this interpretation has given us a lot to ponder about. So moving on to the next question. What are the business and economic implications of current financial debt condition of Sri Lanka, sir?
Right, kind of a contemporary issue that we face now. Yeah. Um, Let me take this approach for this question. Now, generally, in any economy, we have three key markets. One is the goods market, the other one is the financial market, and the third one is the factor market. Sorry, labor market. These financial market and labor market are the markets in the factor market, and then we have the goods market. More precisely, if I introduce these three markets, the goods market is the brain, heart of the economy. The financial market is the brain of the economy. And the labor market is the shoulders of the economy. Now, just imagine the roles these three parts of our body, human body, the roles of these three parts plays in our body. Goods market is the heart, financial market is the brain, and labor market is the shoulder. Now, since your question is based on the financial issue, that is the brain. And the financial system controls the whole economy like our brain. And that is central location or a head office, the financial system of the country, that is, or an economy, that is a central bank. And central bank controls this financial system of the country through its monetary policy. Financial market operations and the labor markets, like I said earlier, two key factor markets. In an economy, it's really important for proper functioning of the goods market. That is the heart. So if this financial market, importantly, malfunctions, it can paralyze the whole economy. You will not die until your heart stops. As long as your heart is beating, as long as your goods market is functioning, you will live. But this kind of malfunctions of your brain, if it goes crazy, so that can paralyze the whole economy. So that is why there is a key role for the central bank and the monetary policy in an economy. Now, if I directly come to your question, the current situation, the financial situation of the economy, we all know that our debt condition has come to a certain bad condition. We have come to that level now. Still, it's not like, okay, it has not yet affected our heart that much, but it would. It would happen in the future. So that is why we need to think of more positive changes, more optimistic changes in this financial system. Now, if you take generally the financial crisis, still we are not in a financial crisis, but financial crises are quite general. We have experienced in the world, and the most effective financial crisis we experienced was this recently, was 2008 global financial crisis in the US, and like went around the world later on. So there are different perspectives into this financial crisis. Or there are different financial crises we can experience in an economy. One is the currency crisis. That is, if your currency is depreciating against the key currencies in the world, so that creates a lot of adverse outcomes. So we are experiencing that one now, like because our Sri Lankan rupee is depreciating against the main currency in the world, the US dollars. That is one thing. The second one is the BOP crisis, balance of payments crisis. So this crisis occurs mainly when you're lacking capital inflows into the country. So that is again another problem that we have in front of us, because we are lacking investment opportunities, FDI inflows to the country. And the third point, or the third kind of financial crisis is banking crisis. What is this banking crisis? That is the liquidity problems of the banking sector. Sometimes, for example, now we know that this is a practical issue again, what we experience now. Now, many credit rating organizations in the world, the top level firms, three firms, Fitch, S&P, and Moody's, and all these three organizations have downgraded Sri Lanka in terms of its credit rating. So now, when this thing happens, it might lead to a certain financial crisis. Sorry, a banking crisis, I would say. Banking crisis. Why? When they say that, okay, the financial system is at a risk level, so sometimes the people might tend to withdraw their money. They try to withdraw their deposits. When they try to do that thing, and then the banking system faces that liquidity issue. The other one is of the financial crisis is business and household. Take both things together. Like business and the household crisis, financial crisis occurs when their debts or the debt levels increases or exceed their capacity. Sometimes due to default payments, if they can't meet this poor performance of business activities, sometimes they can't meet their debt obligations. Right? Sometimes like household sector, people are facing some kind of shortage of sometimes money for their daily transactions or for their other expenditures, long-term expenditures like maybe housing and acquiring other properties. So they might face these kind of financial issues, and then they go for borrowings. Now, we can see at the moment, actually, we are facing all these types of, I'm not saying crisis, right? These kind of, how to say it, like signals are there, signs are there now. So therefore, important point here is this would discourage, or this might have an impact on the goods market. This might have an impact on investment. Because always when these investors are searching for a location, like to invest, like put their, park their capital, they are thinking of the credit trustworthiness. When we are lacking that kind of trustworthiness, I think again, that would lead to another economic problem where our goods market is affected. So that is why at the moment we are in front of these kind of financial issues, though it is not still a crisis. So therefore, soon we need to come up with some short-term solutions for this one to overcome long-term crisis.
So I guess our viewers too may agree that it's certainly an eye-opener for everyone. Catch the rest of this interview in the part 2 of this episode.